written, as well as him writing Small Wars Journal and just a general thought on the world. So you guys can all read his bio in there. I'll keep it short, but PJ, over to you. Thanks for coming, and I look forward to your talk.
Okay, good morning everybody. I'd like to start off by thanking Ben and the rest of the Defense Entrepreneurs Forum for having me here. It's really good to have been involved in this in a small way from the beginning, from that first article that Ben wrote, and we were able to publish in Small Wars Journal, and then it's really taken off from there. So glad to meet a lot of people in person that I've only interacted with virtually so far, so it's really good to be here. As many of you know, I've been a fairly passionate and somewhat outspoken critic of the status quo in the Marine Corps and in the Department of Defense, but like the rest of you, it's because I want to make things better. One of the biggest problems that the organization faces, I think, is both managing and empowering the talent that we have. And I'm not going to go into that discussion too much today, except to say that I think that it's going to only get harder as budget pressures mount, as we deal with the return to garrison mindset or return to garrison debate. It's going to ratchet up that pressure on the force. And so the other thing I think about that debate is that it's pretty poorly argued on all sides. Usually the catchphrase is that all the best people are getting out, and then the other side is, no, that's wrong, all the best people are staying in. And of course the truth is somewhere in the middle there, and it shows here today. I stand here, I'm out on the outside now, but it's not just flattery to say that a lot of the best people are staying in. But I think you do find that if you are one of the good people who's trying to make constant improvements, it's a hard and frustrating road at times to keep pressing on. And that's kind of some of the topics that have been talked about in the breakout session, is that that's a fact of life in any large organization, or really in any endeavor at all. So, but the fact that you're here, I think, says good things about the future of the military and the future of the country in general, and that you're not going to take things lying down. It's the Defense Entrepreneurs Forum, but really it's, I think in a lot of cases, more about entrepreneurship, which is another buzzword that I've seen people kind of attacking on Twitter, that we're full of buzzwords here already. But you're not out there trying to, for the most part, start up a new product, start up a new venture. You're trying to make things work, make new ideas work within a large organization. And so we're applying that entrepreneurial spirit to try to make our organizations work better. And it's not very hard, especially in bureaucracies ingrained with the status quo, kind of like the DoD and many other large organizations are. And that's where the disruptive thinkers term comes in. It's a term that either you love it or you love to hate it. And we've already talked about that a little bit today, but there's a lot that needs disrupting, not just in the DoD, but throughout our government, throughout our society today. And the title that you'll see of my speech in the program talks about big words like socio-political, market forces, all that stuff. I'm really not going to touch on that too much, except to say, in a nutshell, systems tend to be corrupted over time. It's just a matter of entropy, and it's a matter of the way people work. They want to defend their interests, build up fiefdoms, create silos. So you get parasites and weeds growing in any organization. It chokes off growth, it chokes off initiative, and that's what needs to get disrupted. People become complacent over time. They want the easy meal. They want. They become happy, essentially being leaf eaters, waiting for their turn at the trough. It's an easy meal. Yeah, it lacks variety, but you get used to it, and it's a lot easier than hunting down your own meal every time. So that's not the way, though, that you stay at the top of the food pyramid. So I've changed the title of my speech to this: Meat Eaters and Leaf Eaters, and the messy, dangerous art of doing something worthwhile. A friend of mine in the Corps, he really focused on this meat eater, leaf eater distinction, and he uses hand signals to kind of describe, focused on the eyes. So meat eaters have their eyes fixed to the front of their heads. They're always head up, moving forward, looking for ways to, in the animal world, looking for ways to kill things and eat them. But in my analogy, so they're always looking for ways to make things happen, to improve things. The leaf eaters, on the other hand, have eyes out to the side of their head. So they can't see as well to the front, but the grass doesn't move out of the trough or off the ground, right? But they can see to the side and even kind of to the back. But take note, the leaf eaters can see you coming, so you have to be smart about it. And so we'd use these hand and arm signals. We're talking about a new join to a unit, or maybe a superior. We're talking in private, and all you had to do was go like that, and I knew that he thought that person's a leaf eater. So most of us want to be meat eaters, and in my analogy here, this is kind of the entrepreneurial spirit. You're going out and making things happen. You're not content to eat from the trough. But it's a very difficult life. You have to catch what you eat, and you have to be observant, attuned, skilled, biased towards action, and most of all, decisive. And so the peregrine falcon up there, I think, is one of the most amazing birds of prey that are out there. And this, if it works, is a video taken from the back of a peregrine falcon. So there's a camera between the wings. You're looking out over its head. And right now it's patrolling, looking for food. And I want you to note the change when it acquires its prey. So you can see it's always scanning, keeps moving around. Goes over the top of the pond. And immediately, decisively takes action. All right, so you see it again in slow motion, slower motion. Tips in, over the top, quartering, kill. Okay, so what can you learn from Dora the Falcon? The falcon's name is Dora. There's a number of things, most of which you know already, and most of which actually have been covered in the different breakout sessions, so hopefully this will serve to kind of tie some of these things together. First of all, you need to be as tactically and technically proficient as possible if you want to make things happen. One of the breakout sessions we were talking about trust, and the good way to gain trust is that you demonstrate that you know what you're talking about. Then your leadership is going to be like, okay, I can trust this person. When they come up with an off-the-wall idea, they've already shown me that they know the book inside and out. They know their job inside and out, so maybe I should listen. But it's not just about how you fly your airplane, how you employ your platoon. It's also about how do you navigate the bureaucracy. So, for instance, in PowerPoint is the way you get things done, you get decisions made. You need to know how to use PowerPoint. And not just all the formatting baloney, but you need to know how to craft an argument and put it on the slides and go and present it and make things happen. You have to know how the bureaucracy is structured, where the power centers are, and what you're going to do. You can't be someone who just complains and writes articles, but then can't get anything done because I don't do politics, or I don't do PowerPoint, or I don't have time for that. If you want to make things happen, you have to be proficient, not just at the cool stuff, you also have to be proficient at the organizational things. Another thing that you can learn from Dora is that you have to plan out your attack. You have to be ready to flawlessly and violently execute your attack as soon as opportunity presents. So it's about thinking ahead, watching, the OODA loop, orient and observe. So you gotta bide your time, figure out exactly what you need to do to make that thing happen. So Dora starts out, she's in patrol, she sees the bird, and as soon as she sees that bird, she's crafted a three-dimensional attack in her head. You can see how it happens. Crosses over the top where the duck can't see her, and then a very short quartering attack from the side where it never sees the falcon coming. So, organizationally, you can do something like this. And when I say violent attack, violent doesn't always mean, yelling and screaming and online charge from the get-go. A lot of times the most violent attacks have the stealthiest approach. So you need to figure out that right approach. And and a good attack is that no one knows that they're being attacked until they're struck and it's already over. The best attack is one that no one knows there was an attack at all. You just made a change somehow, and everyone's left scratching their head. What happened? You know, all right, I guess we're going to do this new thing now. So you need to be smart in how you lay out your plan and how you navigate through those obstacles. And by being sneaky and stealthy, I'm not telling you to break any rules or break any rules or laws or be nefarious. You just need to bide your time. You know, and sometimes you're going to get a lot of no's, and sometimes the best way to avoid a no is just not ask the question and make things happen. You know, you may get in trouble for that at some point, but at the same time, I think if you have the good intentions, you have that top cover somehow, you have a network out there, you're probably going to make it through if you've got good intentions. And then finally, remember that sometimes Dora misses. Dora the Falcon. You know, the duck might see her. You know, it's not grass. It doesn't stay in. You know, the grass will stay in the trough. The duck could move. Could see the attack coming. So you have to be persistent. You have to be willing to go hungry sometimes. You have to be willing to make mistakes. But you have to let that hunger and those failures continue to hone your skills and build your successes. Okay, so you know, it's kind of nice to compare ourselves to falcons, especially for those of us who are pilots. You know, it strokes our ego. But humans aren't falcons. You know, that animal, every fiber in its body is attuned to one mission, which is to get that duck. For us, we're not that good. And even when we're skilled at one thing, the organization sometimes needs us to do different things. So no one likes to hear the cliche, bloom where you're planted, but sometimes you have to. So we'll switch from falcons to painters for a little bit. I think a lot of you probably know just what that tiny bit of painting is from. It's from the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. This was, you know, it's one of the most amazing works of art, and you could say that it was the culmination of Michelangelo's career as a painter, right? Not so much. Michelangelo wasn't a painter. Michelangelo was a sculptor. And the life's work that he wanted to do was sculpting this grand tomb for Pope Julius II. But all of his peers felt that he was getting a little bit too big for his britches. They kind of wanted to see him fail. I think he was a bit of an arrogant person. And so they whispered in the Pope's ear and said, "We know he's out there doing this tomb. Why don't you commission him to paint the Sistine Chapel?" They're like, you know, you can see them all smugly laughing. This guy's he either has to deny the commission to the Pope, which is kind of a no-go from the get-go, or he's going to grandly and publicly fail at this massive project that the Pope's asking him to do. So what did Michelangelo do? He accepted the commission, and he spent the next 4 years of his life working on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. So does this sound familiar to anybody? You get a really crappy assignment that you don't want. It doesn't use your skills, you don't think. And not only is it just bad management of personnel, you think that someone's doing it on purpose because they want you to fail. So be like Michelangelo. He turned what should have been a career-ending assignment into his biggest achievement that we're still talking about today. So if you want to be an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur, you want to be a leader, you have to bloom where you're planted. You can't just turn off because you don't get the assignment that you want, or you don't get the opportunity that you want. I think a lot of times that outside person, that outside perspective, the person who doesn't really necessarily want to be there, who isn't invested in this organization or this specific way of doing things, hasn't grown up there, a lot of times that gives you the insights to be like, why do we do it this way? Because we've always done it this way. Well, haven't you thought about this? This is what I did when I came from this outside organization. Can we apply that here? And sometimes, that's the innovation that's going to be, really, maybe one of the biggest things of your career, with biggest accomplishments. But even if that's not the case, even if it's just a terrible assignment, you hate it, you're still learning, especially if you're someone who's really a meat eater. You're learning, and that may be the place where you pick up those dots. When Steve Jobs talked about connecting dots, you pick up those dots that then down the road enable you to combine your experiences to make that innovation and make that lasting change in an organization. So bloom where you're planted. Because because you're not necessarily a technician. You're not the inventor who's in a lab who's making one thing work very well if you want to be an entrepreneur. You may have that background, but eventually you need to grow beyond that, where you're an enabler. You're bringing ideas from one place to another, and you're making your team work well, and you're implementing an idea using your team. So the next important thing is that if you're not Michelangelo and you're not a Falcon, you're going to have to be a team player. You're going to have to hunt in a pack. So you need to build those networks, and you need to work with the people around you to implement your ideas. And so in the breakout session I was just in, it was fantastic, talking about how you need to build your top cover, or hope that the top cover finds you, work with your team, delegate. There's cognitive limitations on what you can do, so you have to build that network out. And that's where not only are you going to get your support when you fail, the cover that lets you continue to work, but also you're going to get more ideas from that network of people you talk to. And I'm preaching to the choir literally here, because we're all here, and we networked via the internet, and then we're networking in person now. So entrepreneurs, like I said, bring ideas together. They don't necessarily invent things, but they put things into action. The example of the mouse is a good one. So the computer mouse was not invented by Apple or by Steve Jobs. It was invented by a guy named Doug Engelbart in the 60s. And so this is what the original mouse looked like. Clearly not what we've been using today. So after it was initially invented, then the Xerox PARC Laboratory improved on it, but it was about a $300 piece of specialty equipment that you're not going to buy that for your home computer. But Steve Jobs saw the mouse there, and then brought that idea back to his team. And he told his team, hey, there's this great idea out there. They've got it at this laboratory, but it's not really an idea we can implement on a grand scale. I need you to build this and make it work for under $15 a copy, I think was the number. And so after some time, they took that idea from another team, they took the vision and the constraint that Steve Jobs gave them, and they created the mouse that revolutionized the computer, how we use computers today. So remember, you're not a lone actor, you're not the Falcon, you're working in a network, and you're trying to connect all those ideas and those capabilities to make things happen. And that's where we get to this definition. This is from Joseph Schumpeter, who is a famous economist. I'll give you a second to read it. There's two key things there. One is act with confidence beyond the range of familiar beacons. And the end part of it is getting things done. So your eyes are fixed forward, you're immediate, your head up, moving forward fixed eyes. You want to get things done. But Steve Jobs' challenge, for instance, was in a lot of ways easier than the one that you're going to face. Steve Jobs had his team, he had his vision, and he was able to go out and make things happen and let the market sort things out, which it eventually did in spades. Of course, I'm making that sound a lot easier than it was, but Steve Jobs didn't have an entire organization that was very routine bound, very status quo, working against him when he was trying to make the mouse, for instance. So you're not just fighting the world of the unfamiliar, you're also fighting those that are afraid you're going to upset their trough full of grass. You're fighting the leaf eaters. Now, some of these people are true leaf eaters. They're the petty tyrant bureaucrat. But a lot of the other ones are well-intentioned people who think that who maybe are meat eaters as well. They believe that your change is going to make the organization less effective, so they're going to fight you tooth and nail. And so you have to use all these things I've talked about to figure out how you're going to navigate, how you're going to make your approach, how you're going to have all your forces aligned, and then how you can sell that idea, how you can convince others, especially those ones who are honestly defending the organization, how to convince them that your approach is right, and then use your network to provide